Hello everyone, welcome back to Powerful Nothing and Magic the Gathering Cube podcast. I'm your host Dan, and as always, I'm joined by James. James, how are you doing this week?
Hey there, man. I'm pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing all right, thank you. I'm excited because we've got a fun topic to talk about today. Today, we're going to be theory crafting an idea I had for a cube. So what that means is we're not going to be building the whole cube. We're basically going to discuss this idea I've had and kind of go over some ins and outs, go over the things that you need to think about when you're thinking of putting a cube together that's a little bit outside the box. Kind of everyone at the moment is looking to build the next DanDan, the next 100th ornithopter cube, and this theory crafting that we're doing today is the first step in making an environment like those. The cube we're going to be theory crafting is, what if every card in the cube had Morph? Spicy little topic. I think it's going to be a bunch of fun. Before we get into that main topic, do make sure you like the podcast, give us a 5-star review, all that good stuff. Also, down in the show notes, there will be time codes and a link to a card gallery. We do generally try and read out every card we talk about, but sometimes we get caught up in the moment and we forget. So there will be a link to nice, pretty pictures if you want to follow along. If you want to follow along there, there will also be a link to a video version if you just want to watch the cards appear in front of you as we talk about them.
Yeah, for sure. Theory crafting is honestly a thing that, for me, generally is like in the pub after you have played a cube, and that's the normal venue, but today we're going to try and do it on a podcast instead.
So we're going to get some more sober takes as well.
Exactly.
Okay.
Well,
nice.
We can try.
I think one important thing to touch on is, before we get into the theory crafting about a cube where every card has Morph, let's actually set the scene of kind of how we came up with the idea, and also if you're thinking of building a cube that's outside the norm like this, kind of some steps that you can follow to try and come up with your own environments that work. There's some good ways of coming up with these ideas. The first one is restricting yourself in some way. So, like, take a desert cube, for example. A desert cube is, you don't get a land box. You're restricted by not having basic lands available to you after the draft. You have to draft your lands in the draft. Also, 100 Ornithopters cube. You are restricting yourself by removing all other creatures apart from Ornithopters. And then if you take it to the next level, a bunch of the most popular cube types are also based on a restriction. Like Pauper is only using commons. Peasant only uses commons and uncommons. And even to an extent, like horror-themed cubes, like the Spooky cube, which is really popular as well, they're only using cards that are themed around like horror tropes and such. So kind of restrictions like that are a good way of getting yourself a nice base for a cube.
Yeah, for sure. They can make the cube building process a lot easier, right? I'd suggest, if it's the first time you've built a cube and you're not super confident in how to go about it, a few approaches you can take. One is like do a take on a cube that already exists, but another is, if you go for quite a restrictive restriction, it actually makes the cube building process a lot easier because you just have a way smaller pool of cards to draw from, right? It's if you do something really open-ended, you have to have quite specific ideas in mind about what you want the gameplay environment to be like, because otherwise you're just going to be kind of overwhelmed by the choice of cards available to you. Because otherwise you have every card in Magic to choose from, and that's a lot.
Yeah, like for a first cube, a great restriction could be every card costs less than 50 cents. You can put that into Scryfall as a search condition, and that will cut down so many of the more expensive cards that are harder to get and harder to put together for your first cube. But there's another way you can build cubes. Instead of restricting, you add something. So a good example of this is James's Dual Commander cube. In that cube, you get something additional of a commander, which is a different type of play environment. Like again, it's a one-on-one cube, James's Dual Commander cube. You're not playing a game of Commander. You are playing a one-on-one game of Magic, but you get the addition of a card in the command zone that you always have access to. That is something on top of what you get normally, not something you lose. There's also a good example of the Ball Pit cube. I'll put a link down to that in the show notes. But in that cube, in the Ball Pit cube, every card is also an MDFC with a copy of Chromatic Sphere on the back.
Yeah, it's kind of spicy. There's a lot of scope for this stuff. If you wanna get creative with it, there's loads of places you can go. It's some of them will be fun to chat about 10 minutes and then eminently not workable. Some of them will be fun for a couple of drafts. And some of them, like 100 ornithopters, will actually turn out to be surprisingly deep Magic formats, you know? I will say, like, the variance is high among them. I think it's really good if you're going for one of these more out there cube ideas to find some way to test it a little bit before you go and spend money on Magic cards. But they can lead to really rewarding gameplay experiences, and they're just different, you know? It's and that's often what we want, right?
100%, and definitely with the rise of things like proxying has just meant that people are more likely to... with the rise of proxying and also the rise of like cube tournaments where people want to try new and interesting things more, there's definitely more of a want for cubes like this. One thing that's important, however, is to keep things on some kind of rails and not just go a bit too ham. One important thing that I think you should really stick by if you're building a cube like this is only change one thing. And again, I'm not your dad. If you want to build a cube where you throw every rule out the window and throw every niche thing at the cube, go ahead. But my gut is, cube is already hard enough. People don't have the bandwidth if you change too much. And you will get more out of it if you pick one thing and really focus on it. As James mentioned, with the restrictions, it makes the building part of it easier. But it's also an easier sell to people who might want to draft it. A good example of this is a while ago, I was thinking of building a redacted cube, basically a cube where you take Magic cards and a black Sharpie and you scribble out some lines to make new and interesting cards. Kind of like a good example is like you remove the words once a turn from a bunch of cards and then you get something more broken. That's really cool. And I thought that was a really cool cube idea. But then when I was doing that, I was also sharpening a bunch of lands and like, ooh, these lands come into play untapped now. They're really powerful. So I had the idea of, what if I do a redacted cube that's also a desert? So you have to draft your lands in the cube. But then I took a step back and thought, what is the draft experience of that? What does that look like? You have all the people in the draft having to read all these cards for the first time, work out what they do, as well as on top of that, have to worry about how many lands have I drafted. That seems like a pain. And that's where kind of like you're being too smart. You're doing too many things. My gut with this is find that one thing, that nub of the idea, and that's what you focus on, and that's what will make your cube unique.
Yeah, for sure. And it really wants to be something you can explain in one sentence, right? You don't want to be adding a bunch of descriptors like, yeah, every card's a morph, every creature's an ornithopter. These are like, you can get that right away. There's an idea, there's a hook. And you don't want it to be changing a bunch of stuff, make it really complicated, and it's halfway through the draft before the players really understand what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. Because the reality with a lot of these cubes is they just won't get drafted as much as like a normal cube. Our playgroup will not want to do it every time. They're more likely to want to do one of my regular cubes or one of James's regular cubes than the one that is completely changing, flip upside down, everything all the time, if that makes sense. Like the 100 Ornithopter and like this one specifically are more... It's kind of like having too much dessert, if that makes sense. You're going to get sick of them a little bit quicker than you would like a cube that is a bit more standard.
Yeah, especially if they're quite... you want to avoid them being too like about one or two gimmicks, right? I think it's easy to get drawn into that. And then you draft it once and you do the gimmick thing and it's fine. And then you kind of feel like you've done it and you don't want to draft it again, you know? You've got to make sure, yeah, you actually have enough variety of gameplay experience. You're not just playing the same sorts of games over and over again, but it's going to make people want to come back and keep drafting it.
Yeah, and I think that's why the 100 Ornithopter Cube works as a great example of like you're really changing the way that you are playing Magic with that. Your only creature is this, but how can you make the most of it? And like they found enough ways of taking decks to make it interesting and to make it replayable.
Yeah, and enough stuff that isn't just pumping my Ornithopters, right? Like
Yes.
When I first heard about cube, I was like, oh, you're just gonna, put a bunch of equipment or whatever, or counters or whatever on your ornithopters and attack with them, and fine. Maybe you convoke something, whatever. But what they've done is they've built something where all the strategies are still about the ornithopters, but there's a bunch where the ornithopters never attack. They're just game pieces that are being sacrificed or returned to your hand for card advantage or whatever. And there's a storm deck, and that's dope. And I think you've got to have those. You've got to make sure you still have a really wide range of decks. And it's not just a couple of gimmicky things, and that's the whole cube,
I'm just laughing to myself, because I think every time I've played your 2-bit version of the 100 Ornithopter Cube, I've been like the one player without an infinite card draw engine. I definitely sat down opposite like you and friend of the show, Firetrope Modo, and you'd be like, okay, I infinitely draw my deck this way or this way, and I'm just like, I'm just casting an overrun. What am I doing?
Yeah, the thing is, I've never seen a cube where you so frequently are able to draw your deck and not able to win the game,
Perfect. But again, it's a unique environment that really kind of is a testament to how it's built, but also how it was thought about in the first place. I think that's a good position for us to move over to our topic, which is, what if every card in the cube had Morph? So what we're going to be doing is we'll start off with the questions we need to ask ourselves to see if this is a viable strategy. And then we'll kind of deep dive into some more of specific archetypes or specific cool cards that could kind of work in this. There will be a link down to a Cube Cobra list. I put this together in December. It's not a full cube list. Don't go there expecting buy now, ship it, it's done. It's more just a collection of all the cards that I could initially thought could work quite well with this. So if you want to use it as a base and build it yourself, by all means, copy it in Cube Cobra, crack on. Would love to see it. But let's jump in with our discussion on what if every card in the cube had Morph. So I'll read Morph, importantly. So a Morph is something that can be played face down as a 2/2 creature for 3 generic mana. It's colorless, and it doesn't have a creature type. It also has no abilities. So with that, ask yourself, what does that mean? What is the thing you're changing to the cube environment? How is it good? How is it bad? And the easiest place to start is by breaking down the thing that you're changing. So for us, if every card is a morph, what characteristics do morphs have? Well, we know that they're 3 mana. They're colorless spells. There's a bunch of cool effects that care about colorless spells that we could look at. They're creatures. There's if every card in our cube is also a creature, effects that care about creatures are going to be better. They morphs all have 2 power. There's a bunch of effects that care about either low power or 2 or less. We could look at running those. They all have toughness too. That will make a bunch of removal instantly better. Things like shocks are really good in this cube because a bunch of people are going to have 2 toughness creatures. Morphs also have no abilities. They're vanilla. There's cards that care about vanilla creatures. That's an interesting thing that we can play around with. And on top of that, there's also just the general cards that care about morphs. There's a bunch of cool things you can do with morphs. There's cards that turn morphs face up. There's cards that let you look at a morph that's face down. There's some cool interactions with morphs. There's things with like if you flicker a morph, it will leave the battlefield and come back face up. These are some cool things that you can do. Once you've looked at the thing you're changing and just basically go over every type line, but really go over every part of the card, everything you're changing, you can really start finding, that's the base to finding cool things to do in your cube. That's what they would have done with the 100 Ornithopter cube. They would have, it's an artifact, it's a creature, it has flying, it is 0 mana, it's got 0 power. How can we, what cool things can we do with that? This is the very first step in finding the cool things that will actually make your cube work.
Yeah, for sure. It's, you want to be starting to think at this stage, not really about decks per se, but ideas and sort of core synergies you can start building the decks around, right? And ways to sort of exploit and profit from the rules quirk you've introduced, if that's the way you've gone with your cube design, right? And that is going to like give you a bit of inspiration when you start to move on to like what do you want the archetypes to be.
Exactly, and it will also let you know pretty quickly, is there enough depth to your idea? If you can only come up with like one or two things, like effectively those one or two things are like the basis, like they're not the final archetypes, but they're like the nubs of the idea for an archetype. And if you just have 8 people and there's only 1 or 2 decks, is that a deep enough draft environment? Should you continue? This is kind of the point of this, is like we haven't bought any cards yet. All it's cost us is 10 minutes having a conversation at a pub or on a Discord call. This is kind of like these are the starting points of it, basically.
Yeah, for sure. Honestly, if you're struggling for ideas at this stage, there's probably a better cube you could be building, you know?
Yeah, it's cost you nothing at this point. Just change the idea to something else and keep on trucking and you'll be okay. But once you have those ideas, you can then start asking yourself, like, what else do we need to think about? Like, how will our change affect things? So with this cube, with every card in the cube has morph, there is the obvious question of, do we need to run any creatures? Because and there is no correct answer to anything we're asking. Like it's design choices of how we take things. My gut is because I think we would lose too many cool interactions with morphs by not running creatures, that I think we still run creatures. But there is a world where you could build a cube where every card has morph. Do we actually need to run any dedicated creatures? Because all your lands are morphs, your instants, your sorceries are morphs. Like they are also creatures. Like they all become like effectively they all become like all your cards are split cards, which are also 3-mana creatures. Like that is a way you could take it. Kind of like on this one, James. Like my gut is I personally want some creatures.
Yeah, no, I hate that idea of we don't have any creatures, because I think so many of the interesting things we can do with morphs involve them being creatures, and I think in that scenario, if we're all spells, we're probably just going to play spells-based decks against each other a lot, you know, and largely be ignoring the morph text other than I don't need my 6th land. I'll make a grey ogre instead, you know, and that's not that fun. Like, sure, you could still have some face-down creature payoffs, but it's kind of hard to make them good if you can't never flip up your morphs, I'd say.
No, I would agree. And like for me, one of the coolest part about morphs is not knowing what it is. Is it Willbender? Is it not Willbender? Like, if you know for sure it's not a creature, that is less interesting to me. But if there's a world where like it could be a creature or it could be a big beefy creature, I'm going to flicker and try and cheat into play that way. There's more tension there. There's more interesting. So for me, I think that's like I think it was an important one to start with. But yeah, for me, I think we are definitely running creatures. The next one is a big one as well, because not all effects with morph, but most cards with morph traditionally have a way of turning themselves face up, of unmorphing. So I'm going to read Untitled Tracker. This is 5 and a red for a 3/3 creature hound scout with first strike and morph for 4 and a red. So this can be played face down for 3 generic as a 2/2, and then at any point you can turn it face up for that 4 and a red cost. I wasn't initially thinking of putting a turn them face up cost, but it is something we could do. Like that would technically be manifest, I believe. But James, what do you think about that? Like, what is your gut? Like, should we give creatures that don't have a turn face up cost? Should we give them a cost?
So realistically, the cost would be their mana cost, right? It would be like when you manifest Dread or original manifest a creature, you can just pay the mana cost to turn it face up, right? Yeah, I think both answers here are fine. I think it's a really big sort of decision point in designing the cube, because it really dictates a lot of the card choices we're going to make down the track, right? Because if part of the thing you're excited about for building this cube is playing with a bunch of the cool creatures that have morph, then you shouldn't let other creatures flip up, right? Because then there just aren't enough reasons to run the morph creatures. I think it's also partly depends on what sort of power level we're going for here, because if we do let creatures turn up for any CMC, you know, there's some interesting, very powerful stuff we could do, right? Like creatures with where their CMC is low, but they they have a big additional cost to put into play normally. It's like something like an abhorrent oculus, right? It would be very powerful. You just play it face down, turn 3,
that's
and then
messed
turn it
up.
face up.
Yeah.
And then you're like flipping into more manifests and stuff. That's cool. But if we're getting something more low power, but I think if we're saying only morphs can turn face up, other creatures can't, then we kind of need to pitch the power level of the cube. Not that a 3-mana 2/2 is good, but a 3-mana 2/2 has to be relevant, you know? And that does put a little bit of a cap on what sort of power level we can go for, I think.
Yeah, I would agree. My gut is, I think you get more out of it if you don't let them be turned face up, which does lower the power level. And also, there is a world where the branding of every card has morph is better than every card has manifest.
Yeah. Yeah. No one wants that, do they?
Like, I'm thinking of how many clicks am I getting on the
how many cards? Every card has manifest.
On the next
Allow
Cube
me
Clash.
to look up what
exactly,
manifest does.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like I think that's a key part of it. Of kind of like, if you are changing it to something like this, I think you need to be very clear. And like, technically, they won't have they can be played face down as a morph, but that makes sense as a card. Then also the additional, because everything else will then change depending on what it costs. I think that's an additional level of potential confusion. So my gut is we go with that. We go with every card as morph. They can't be turned off. They can't be turned face up unless they have an ability that lets them do it. And then that's the power level we go with. But with that in mind, that is a very good point of what comes next.
We are kind of committing to putting quite a lot of creatures with morph in the cube, I think, right? Because otherwise we have too many morphs that are just face down dudes.
Yeah, I'd agree. On the power level point of view, I think we do need to have the conversation of, for the power level to work, it needs to be good that someone is spending turn 3 playing a 2/2. That's the kind of world we need to be in. Like when I think of that, and when I think of morphs to an extent, because, and you, I believe you will go with me on this, James, because we're both of a similar start time in terms of coming back to Magic. Khans of Tarkir draft, that was a draft format where morphs was a deck that was viable, and it started with a lot of people going turn 1 tap land, turn 2 tap land.
Yeah, I'm on 22 life. Turn 3, I'm going to play my 2/2. Yeah.
Like, that's kind of where we are with this, which is not good or bad. Like, it means you don't get to run the most efficient cards, but it will make the environment cheaper. It will make the environment more budget, which is always a good thing as far as I'm concerned, if you can put a cube together for cheaper, because in the environment that works, like, tap lands are good and fit the environment, then that's kind of fine.
Yeah, for sure. I think, I mean, it's not meant to be good in this cube, playing a face down creature on turn 3, right?
Yes,
because we can always do that. That's like the floor of our turn 3, right? But it has to be relevant. It can't be like completely, you know, your opponent can't be doing something that's completely on another level, right?
Yeah, and talking of on another level, this is kind of where we are, I think. If that's our goal, it means that we have to be careful with cards we're putting in, because like we can't have, if playing a morph on turn 3 is the bait, it is kind of like the average. That means we can't have people playing a 2-mana 2-powered first striker, for example, or we can't have them playing a 2-mana 2/3, because that just wrecks all combat and that kind of stuff. So that's from our level, we are very much working around the 2-mana, or like the 2/2 is the base of all our creatures as well. Like, it's fine to have things that are bigger than that, but we also need to be aware of power level for things that are around the 1, 2, 3 mana mark. They can't be, you can't have things that shoot up in power level above that, basically.
Yeah, that makes sense. Probably a reasonable baseline is that there shouldn't be many 2-drops that beat a morph in combat, right? In trade with a morph, they can't beat a morph too often.
Well, so that was also something that they did when they brought morphs back in Khans of Tarkir. When we seen them originally, they could just trade with anything. Any amount of mana could trade with any amount of mana. Because they're face down, they can be flipped up. Flipping up a morph is a special action. If you want to feel smart in a draft, it doesn't use the stack. It's not restricted by timings, that kind of stuff. But like when morphs was brought back in Khans, they introduced a rule of no creature in the set can unmorph and kill a 2/2 while surviving itself unless the morph cost was more than 5 mana. So, like, it means that if you attack with a morph and your opponent has 4 mana, you know that you're not going to get blown out, basically. If they have 5 mana, then they could eat your 2/2, basically.
Yeah, and I think part of the decision to go down that route, right, was to avoid the thing where I think in a lot of the older morph formats, it sort of felt like your whole game would just swing on guessing which morph they had. I think there was a particular dynamic with, I don't know the name of the set, someone can tell me, but they were like...
Is it Legions?
Yeah, maybe Legions, where like there were a 4 mana morph where like it would flip up and it was a first striker and it would eat your guy, but there was a different morph at the same mana cost at common where it would flip up and then if he dealt damage to the player, it would shock something. And you were just, you know, one of them massively punished you for blocking, one of them massively punished you for not blocking. And you were just kind of taking a stab in the dark every time. And that was the whole game, right? So, yeah, I think that was the idea behind the 5CMC rule. I don't know that we need to be like super rigid on that in the cube.
I would agree,
but,
yeah.
It is something to bear in mind.
I would agree, and part of that will just become from a lot of the older morphs are a bit more, like, some are quite powerful, but some of them are very janky. So I think it's more, in this cube, we're probably going to run the morph cards that are cool and interesting, and from a power level point of view, I think it will probably be fine. Like, yeah, my guys, we don't have to stick as stringently to this as Khan's Draft Limited did, but it is a knob we can turn back the other way after testing, is my gut. The next question I think we need to ask ourselves, James, is Morph now isn't the only type of face-down mechanic. There are other face-down cards that you can run. Every card in this cube has Morph, but do we run other face-down cards, like things that manifest, things that disguise, things that cloak, things that manifest dread? Like, there may be more in that list of face-down style cards. Like, do you think we should run more of those, James, or do you think that could be a bit too confusing?
I think it's fine to run them. Like, so Manifest Dread specifically was a mechanic I quite liked because you had a lot of interesting overlap with like the graveyard stuff. And that's all pretty good. You do need to be quite clear that I as you know, I'm generally quite lazy and I just give everyone the Infinity Board tokens for Cube. I think if you were to include Manifest and Morph, you would actually have to get Manifest tokens and Morph tokens because it would be slightly confusing in that, in a way that doesn't really come up in normal cubes, right? Because you can, in this cube, morph a creature that doesn't have Morph, but we're saying that creature isn't allowed to turn face up. But if you manifested it, then it would be allowed to turn face up. That is a potential source of confusion, right? Not saying we can't do it, but it is something to be aware of, I think.
Yeah, I'm quite torn on this because a lot of the cards with these mechanics are very cool. There's some cool design space with them. Like you mentioned, a Binoculus. That is a sweet card. Like, it, from a power level point of view, it might just be too strong for this cube, but I'm not going to say it's not a cool card that, if we're doing face down stuff, would be quite cool. Again, there is no right or wrong in this. My gut would be you don't run them just from a ease of explaining things point of view. But I don't think it's incorrect. I would not add the ones with Ward because that actively annoys me.
Oh, God.
Is that Disguise?
Yeah, Disguise has Ward. Yeah.
Those ones actively annoy me. No Ward is going in this cube because I hate because Ward irritates me. That's a me issue more than...
Yeah. Oh, God, can you imagine? Because you could disguise or morph your disguise card. Yeah, that sounds horrendous. I know I've seen cubes where people are doing the morph thing and they're just like, the disguise is the same as the morph. There is no ward. Because it's also does the thing where if there's only a couple of disguise cards in the cube and you disguise a creature rather than morphing it, then your opponent knows what creature it is. And that as we said, like a lot of the joy of Morph is trying to work it out, right? So if there's only a couple of options, it's kind of less fun.
No, I think I would agree. Like in my head, like if I'm going full, I'm making this. I'm getting custom sleeves with every cut with everything has the Morph art on the back. is my big brain play if I'm doing
That's
this.
sick. I really like that. Yeah.
Well, we really need a sponsorship with a custom sleeve
listening,
maker. But yeah, that could be quite.
Please do get in contact.
Like, unironically, if I was building the ball pit cube, the one where every card is also a chromatic sphere on the back, I would do that. If you're committing to the bit that much, I think you get sleeves, but that's a separate thing. Cool. So yeah, I think those are important decision points. And again, there is no right or wrong if you're building this. And if you're building a cube yourself, there is no right or wrong. It's what you think works best for you and your playgroup and what you think will be the most fun. Those type of conversations are very important to have very early on, so you are setting the restraint for you. So when you're searching for cards in Scryfall, you know what to search for. If we decide to go with manifest cards, it's an extra keyword, it's an extra search term we can search for when we're looking for cards. It opens the pool that little bit more. If we don't want to have them, then we don't have to search for them. It's just good things to consider. Right, so after you've had those conversations in terms of like what is the play environment, like how fast is the cube, that kind of thing. I think it's important to start looking for some cards that are good. So again, these are not decks; these are kind of like starting points for decks. I think a good place to start with morphs is that morphs there's a bunch of build arounds. So like this would be the same with ornithopters if there was like an ornithopter lord, for example. If there was like a artifact that specifically powered up the word ornithopters, I don't think there is, but with morphs, there's a bunch of cards that care about morphs. So a card like Trail of Mystery is a great start. It's 1 and a green for enchantment. Whenever a face-down creature you control enters, you may search your library for a basic land, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Whenever a permanent you control is turned face up, if it's a creature, it gets +2/+2 until end of turn. That is a morph payoff. Like, James, I'm assuming we like Trail of Mystery?
Trail of Mystery seems great, yeah. It is important to frame these cards in the right context, though, right? Because we think of them in our head as build-arounds, right? Because that's what they are in every other format. And morph build-arounds. They're not in this format, right? They're just powerful card advantage engines, right? Because every card in the deck says morph. Now, sure, if your deck is more built around, just casting the spells out of your hand rather than casting them as morphs, then these will be less good. But these are not build-arounds in this cube in the traditional sense, right?
Exactly, and basically this reads whenever you play a creature effectively, you can go and get a basic land. That's very strong. You'll be able to hit this as much as you want, and there is a world where you need to work out are the payoffs too strong for the environment you're building? Like the other idea I had, which we're not doing, is what if every card had cycling? A card like Fluctuator reduces the cost of cycling by a bunch. So that just becomes a card that lets you just put your whole deck into the bin. That seems like it would break the environment a bit too much to actually be fun for everyone. Like I think the next card might be similar, like a card like Dream Chisel. This is a 2-mana artifact that says face-down creature spells you play cost 1 generic less to play. Or there's been a writer to say 1 generic less to cast. So that means all our morphs now cost 2. If the base level of all your creatures get cheaper, this is a cool card, but James, do you think this card is too good in this environment?
No, I don't think it's too good. No, because it's a cost reduction is generally going to be less powerful than something like Secret Plans or Trail of Mystery, where they're giving you a card advantage, right? Because if you just go turn 2, Dream Chisel, turn 3, Morph, turn 4, Morph, what have you done? You've got some 2/2s. You've probably close to running out of cards in hand at this point. Your 2/2s aren't going to kill your opponent because they can also play some 2/2s, even if they're at a slightly lower rate. You're going to have to do some more than that. I'm not saying it's a bad card, but I certainly don't think it's busted. There might be some interesting, janky combo nonsense with the cost reduction stuff, I think, as well.
Ooh,
but
I do like that.
If you can stack up some of the cost reducers and get your morphs just down to 0, then it seems, we can get a paradoxical outcome in there. We can really build around it, right? There's maybe even because it is every card, right? Is a face having ranking, so you can If you had something like Heartless Summoning in, that's for 1 black enchantment, all your creatures cost 2 less, but all your creatures have -2/-2. Another cost you, so you could get the cost down to 0, right? So all your morphs just enter 0 mana, die. And then if we have like anything that lets us draw a card on the way through, like, like a Midnight Reaper or Secret Plans, anything like that, then we can like go all the way through our deck. And that could be kind of dope, It sounds kind of janky and it's a few pieces, but maybe, if the cube allows it.
This feels like the environment where we should be leaning into the jank a little bit.
Exactly.
I like that because there'll also be cards that make colorless spells cost cheaper to cast as well, which could be cool. I'm sure there's some Eldrazi. I'm sure there's this. Is it Eldrazi that reduces the cost of colorless spells? That could be another.
I think Eye of Ugin. Does Eye of Ugin say colorless spells? I mean, that's too powerful, I think, if it does. I don't know. It says colorless Eldrazi spells.
So Herald of Kozilek, 1 and an Is It, 2 for Eldrazi Drone, Devoid, and colorless spells you cast cost 1 generic less to cast. So that's another one of those effects. Like, there's definitely something there that could be quite cool. Like it again. If you can find these different decks, then that shows that you're onto something. Basically, if it's not just your things smushing into each other, everyone doing the same thing. If we can make a cool deck with it, then I think that's a good sign there's something there. Like you've mentioned Secret Plans a couple of times, James. I'm going to read that one out now. That's green and a blue for an enchantment. Face down creatures you control get +0/+1, and whenever a permanent you control is turned face up, draw a card. This might become the best card in the cube.
Seems very powerful, doesn't it?
Yeah. So we would need ways of interacting with enchantments. There are plenty of morphs that unmorph and destroy enchantments, which is nice. But
yeah, it seems kind of busted. But then also, like, if we can't put Secret Plans in our morph cube, then what the hell are we doing?
Exactly. We just accept that this is the Black Lotus of this cube. It's this 14-cent uncommon from Khans of Tarkir. That I am so happy with this. But yeah, there's a bunch of other cool morph cards, like some that stood out to me. You have a card like Kadena, Slinking Sorcerer. This is the 4-mana Sultai commander that lets you play the first face-down creature spell you cast each turn costs 3 generic less to play. So it just gives you a free morph every turn. And it also, whenever you flip a morph face up, draws you a card. That one seems pretty solid. There's a couple of effects that do similar things like that. Another type of one, James, what do you think about these? Like, this could be a bit too inside baseball, but like, what do you think about cards like Lens of Clarity and Smoke Teller? These are cards that basically let you look at a face-down creature.
Don't forget Keeper of the Lens as well. Absolute banger.
Ooh.
1 mana, 1/2, phenomenal in the old 2/2 cube with the same text. Yeah, so like baseline, these effects are really bad. In that, like, it's just not worth a card normally to look at the face down creatures, right? But I think it's really cool, and I would like to be able to include some stuff that makes this good. So I think one kind of interesting thing you could do with this effect, though, to make it playable is if you have repeatable ways to flicker your opponent's stuff, it's kind of interesting, right? Because normally if you flicker a face-down creature, then it's going to return to the battlefield face up if it's a permanent, but if it's an instant or sorcery on the other side, then it's just going to go away. So you don't really want to be out there just flickering your opponent's face-down creatures without knowing what they are. But if you have a Lens of Clarity in play, and you can see that face-down creature is an instant or a sorcery, or even if it's late game, it's a land, if you don't care about them having a land, then you can start flickering them. So that would be a kind of cool build-aroundy thing you could do with the Lens of Clarity type effects.
Yeah, weaponizing flicker down into removal seems like, you're leaning into the unique aspect of this cube. I think that's quite cool. There's some other cards that I think could be interesting. You have cards like Ixidor, Reality Sculptor, and Skirk Alarmist. These are both cards that effectively have an ability that turn a face-down creature face up. So it's a way of flipping up your morphs and also flipping up your creatures that aren't morphs and don't have and flipping up your non-morph ability-based creatures. Ixidor is also a 5-mana 3/4 with a Lord effect for morphs. It gives all morphs +1/+1. I think these are quite cool. I think you probably these seem like they're kind of cool build arounds that you can lean into. Like effectively, James, Skirk Alarmist. Also, Skirk Alarmist is 1 and a red for a 1/2 haste. When turn target face down creature you control face up, at end of turn you sacrifice it. Ixodral and Skirk Alarmist are basically sneak and show.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not sure we're getting a Crystal Brand in this cube, but if it was there, you could play it face down for 3 mana and then turn it face up.
That's the thing, yeah. There's a bunch of Morph Matters cards from around the years, and also you can look up cards that say face down. I think those are kind of the ones that kind of immediately came to mind in terms of these are quite powerful. I know there's a lot of the Morph kind of cool effects kind of revolve around those type of things. They're either drawing you cards in some way, or they're turning Morphs face up. Those are some cool effects that I think we can definitely look at running. And my guys outside of Secret Plans, I think they're all fine. They're all cool and they're good build arounds. And Secret Plans is just kind of it's a there's a world where in Cube Cobra where you select the picture of your deck, it's either going to be the Morph picture or it's going to be Secret Plans basically. So I think it's iconic enough you probably still run it. Let's move on to some other things that kind of get better in this environment, because again, we're going back to that list we had at the start of kind of what are characteristics of morphs that we can lean into. So one thing that's important is cards that remove 2/2s are fantastic. Where is the level on removal? Like Disfigure gives a creature -2/-2. Shock just deals 2 damage to a creature. Ceremonious Rejection, single blue, instant counter target colorless spell. Infernal Reckoning, single black, exile target colorless creature, you gain life equal to its power. These become very, very good. I think for the targeted removal, I think we still run these, but or I think we run these. I think a Pyroclasm might be too good, but where do you think on the power level of the removal, James?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've got to bear in mind that people can and presumably will still be just casting a bunch of face-up creatures a lot of the time, right? It's not like every game is just going to be, I have 4 2/2s and you have 4 2/2s. That's a thing we're doing in the cube, is building around the face-down creatures and maximizing them. But it's not like we're not casting any other spells, right? So I feel like we could go a bit too deep on just targeting 2/2s with the removal, and it maybe ends up at the point where the 2/2s get worse and casting creatures face up gets better. So I mean, we can have a little bit of it, I think, but I wouldn't go too ham on it, because I think we kind of want to give people reasons to cast their creatures face down, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So that's the thing. These cards are all super efficient, and they're the first things that will come up when you look at them. But there's a world of should all of our removal be at 4 mana, so that people can actually play their morphs and then they get answered, rather than it comes down and they already have the mana to answer it. Basically, is that a reasonable discussion? Like in my Treat Yourself cube, where the goal is to go a bit bigger, most of my removal is bigger because I don't want someone building a big engine and spending a bunch of mana putting something into play, and then it's just swordsed. And the investment in mana is so much is a big blowout, basically, because you spent 7 mana to do something, they spent 1 mana to answer it. That's a real feel bad.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the worst thing for people to be able to, answer a morph at a mana advantage. I don't think that's the end of the world, but I just wouldn't want to have too many of the small ball removal spells that hit the morphs but don't hit any of the good face-up creatures you're going to cast, right? Because I don't want it to be someone plays a bunch of 2/2s and then the other person plays a 3/3, and because they cast a 3/3 face-up, and then it just blanks everything, I think we need to be able to answer cards that people just cast as well, right?
Exactly, yeah. So looks like maybe we're not going to run every Disfigure and every Shock effect, but if we have a big colorless section that has other cards as well, then maybe the colorless counterspell gets a bit more interesting. It's not just answering the morphs; it's answering other things as well. Maybe that's a good way of doing it. The other thing about morphs is that they are all generic creatures. So you have a card like Muruganda Petroglyphs, 3 and a green. Enchantment, creatures with no abilities get +2/+2. This seems like For some people, they will love building a combo engine. Some people will like smashing morphs into your face. This seems like a pretty solid like build around for that. Like, would you go along with that, James?
Yeah, this is interesting. I kind of feel like you need maybe some other ways. What I'm thinking about with this, right, is what's the curve look like where this is actually great with just casting face down creatures, you know? Like, what, I go like turn 3 morph, turn 4 morph, turn 5 cast petroglyphs, attack for... That's okay, it's not amazing.
My gut is Dream Chisel, morph this.
It's good in the Dream Chisel deck, that's true. Yeah.
Like, that's where I think this is good. And it's... I added this one to the list because we've played a cube where this is the aggro deck. The blue nothing cube. This is what beats you down. It is play a bunch of morphs and then Murgan Petroglyphs is the thing that can kill you. Like I think it's my gut is that these games have the potential to go long, and I think this is more interesting than an overrun because it's still leaning into what the cube is doing.
That's very true. Yeah. I'm not opposed to it. I don't think it's like cracked, but I think it could do some work.
No, I'd agree. The other thing as well with morphs is they have 2 power. So there's a bunch of cards that reward you for playing cards with 2 or less power. Like there's a card like Arabella, Abandoned Dole. It's red and a white, 1/3. Whenever it attacks, it deals X damage to each opponent, and you gain X life, where X is the number of creatures you control with power 2 or less. We have cards like Sidar, Kondo of Jamura, 2 green and a white, 2/5. Flanking, that is the main downside of this card. You have to remember what it does. But it does have reminder text for it. But it says creatures your opponents control without flying or reach can't block creatures with power 2 or less. So this is a nice way of weaponizing your morphs, making them unblockable. That's kind of cool. There is also there's the Simic Azuri that I'm a big fan of. It's the one with it's the experience counter one that whenever a creature with power 2 or less enters the battlefield under your control, you get an experience counter. Then at the beginning of combat on your turn, put X on counters on another target creature you control, where X is the number of experience counters you have. There's some interesting things you can do. Like basically what I'm saying is we don't have to run all of these, but this is a nice avenue we can go down. There are rewards for creatures having power 2 or less. Like this seems like similar to the Muruganda Petroglyphs. It's like another way I think you can take an aggro deck in this format, is what I'm trying to get at, basically.
Yeah, for sure. Because I think if we're saying we're not going to put in loads of super efficient 2-drops, if we want an aggro deck, it kind of needs to be doing something else than that, right? So yeah, it's nice to have some options there.
Nice. And then the other aspect of morphs that we can really dive into is that they are colorless. I'm assuming, James, you're a big fan of a card like Mystic Forge in this type of environment. Mystic Forge is 4 mana artifact. You can look at the top card of your library anytime. You may cast artifact spells and color spells on the top of your library. Tap, pay 1 life, exile the top card of your library. Now, the real question I'm going to ask you straight away as a rules question, does this work? I'm pretty sure it does, because it's run in a bunch of Morph EDH decks. So therefore, unless... I have seen this before in Fallen 4, EDH Rec just completely ballsing up a rules interaction. But I'm pretty positive this works the way we want it to. And if it does, do we like it, Jake?
Yeah, it's really powerful, right? Like, because, you know, in those Morph EDH decks, it only casts for Morphs off the top. This, in our cube, it casts everything. It's super powerful, especially if you get any of those cost reducers going. Seems like a very powerful thing to be doing in this cube to me. Like, even with no synergies, I think it's really good. And yeah, if you get a cost reducer going, it seems pretty busted. I like this as the start of something powerful.
If it helps, I'm looking at the numbers on EDH Rec. 751 people are running this in their Morph Commander deck. So it's not us who's wrong.
I'm going to assume that, yeah. Like, surely.
Let's go with that. Yeah. But there's some other colorless Matters cards that are really cool. Like a card like Ghostfire Blade seems quite solid. 1 generic for an artifact equipment. Equip creature gets +2/+2. Equip 3, or Ghostfire's Blade ability costs 2 less to activate if it targets a colorless creature. So again, we have some range with our aggro here of it's a cool artifact it's a good artifact that plays with what the deck is trying to do. It's a better bone splitters, which is not nothing.
Yeah, this card's very powerful. If you played Khans of Tarkir Limited, you know what's up with a Ghost Fireblade. Because obviously when you flip a morph, it doesn't leave the battlefield as well, so the equipment will still be attached.
That's kind of hot, yes. I do like that. And then another card that I think is quite fun is a card like Gruesome Slaughter. This one is hot. 6 generic for a sorcery. Until end of turn, target colorless... Until end of turn, colorless creatures you control gain tap. This creature deals damage equal to its power to target creature. So you're turning your board of morphs into removal, which is quite fun. Then it also doubles up with cards like... there's a bunch of Rakdos cards from around this sort of time from Battle for Zendikar that do similar thing with colorless creatures. There's like Barrage Tyrant, which is 4 and a red for a creature that says 2 and a red, sacrifice another colorless creature. Barrage Tyrant deals damage equal to the sacrifice creature's power to target creature or player. You can start throwing your morphs at other people. That's kind of fun. There's a bunch of other effects, kind of like Nettle Drone, Flayer Drone, and Molten Nursery that also like will ping your opponents when you cast colorless spells or do things with colorless creatures. Like there's a whole kind of like colorless matters section here that is kind of, I think, works with the power level. Like there's a world where Mystic Forge is a bit too big and dumb, but it's very cool, so we're probably going to run it. Everything else is kind of like a decent power level with it. Like we could go as high as like in the list I've got, I do currently have Ugin, Eye of the Storms, which is the big 7 mana Ugin that exiles stuff whenever you cast a colorless spell. That might be too good, but like there's a real depth of colorless matter stuff that we can look at that would work in this cube, I think.
Yes, we can specifically use a lot of the Eldrazi stuff, right? But they've gone back to that well a few times with all the Eldrazi sets have a bunch of colorless matter stuff, which is going to work pretty well here.
But yeah, there is a ton of really cool like colorless matter stuff that I think you can really lean into. Like there's also cards like Forsaken Monument, which basically gives all your colorless creatures +2/+2, which I think is going to be quite solid. Like there's so many of those options that I think are quite fun. We've touched on Flicker. Like I think Flicker is going to be really good because it can be removal, which is really interesting, but then it's also a way of cheating things into play. Like in morph decks in general, like Achroma Angel of Wrath, I think is the red one, that has morph anyway, and that ephemerating that or flickering that is good in a bunch of formats. Like that's basically, yeah, as we've gone over, when you flicker a morph, it comes in on the other side, so you can cheat on a bunch of mana. But that's not the only thing you can do. Like there's also things like polymorph effects. Polymorph effects are really fun. These are effects that let you sacrifice a creature to go through your deck and until you hit another creature and you put that into play. In this deck, what I think is quite funny is that if you run polymorphs, you have the creatures. Like the rest of your deck is creatures. So you only have to run the polymorph effects, some interaction, and your cheat targets, and you kind of have a cool deck. What do you think of that one, James?
Yeah, I think that's sweet. Yeah. So, I mean, it's kind of like building an oath deck, right? Where we're specifically trying to not have cheap creatures because all of our spells double as cheap creatures. And yeah, it's nice in this cube that even if with the cheating stuff in by flickering the morph, we don't actually have to have big top-end threats that have morph. They can be anything because, sure, we can't flip them face up by paying a bunch of mana if they don't have morph, but we can still put them into play face down. So yeah, I really like this. I think the polymorphs is a really nice idea because I always think it's good if you're going to put big uncastable creatures in your cube. I really like to have more than one way to cheat them into play, you know? It makes it feel a lot less one-dimensional. So yeah, I think polymorphs and Flicker both sound great.
Yeah, I think they're going to be a bunch of fun. Like those along with like Ixidor and Skirk Alarmist that we mentioned earlier. Like effectively, like this is our kind of combo deck. Like I think that's kind of like you can classify it at like it's a version of a combo deck because you are A plus B equals and you are cheating something cool out of it. Like it isn't the infinite mana combo, but like we've already gone over some decks that do that as well. What's nice is like kind of like by talking about these cards that are good with morphs or do interesting things, we kind of we have our aggro deck, we have like some combo decks, and like building a control deck in this format, James, probably isn't going to be that hard. Like maybe we do run one Pyroclasm or something like that, and like that's our and like there are ways of removing small creatures. There's ways of interacting with stuff, like of holding down the board. Like that is a base for a control deck. That seems quite easy to put together.
Yeah, I think quite a lot of what the control deck is going to be doing right is you want to kill the few cards that actually matter, the payoffs, and you let them have some 2/2s for a while, and then you play a Pyroclasm. I guess the thing that makes it slightly more challenging for control, though, going into the late game, is that a lot of your plan with control going into the late game, a lot of why you get advantage, is because you have card draw spells, so you still have productive things to do with your mana, and your opponent's flooded out. And that doesn't happen as much in this cube, right? Like, even though they might not have exciting things to do, they can always play 2/2s, you know? So you do just have to be prepared for that and make sure you can actually turn the corner and play something more powerful at the top end.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It does completely change. Like, they always have a creature to play, so that is definitely a different mechanic. But I guess you always have a blocker to play. But it is like I don't know. Yeah, there is definitely some ways we can take it. Another deck I think could be quite cool is using cards like Horizon Stone and Krufix, God of Horizons. So like Horizon Stone is a 5 generic for an artifact that says if you would lose unspent mana, that mana becomes colorless instead. So basically, you can use these as batteries. So if you tap if you don't have anything to use your mana for, you just tap it and park it on the Horizon Stone in your mana pool. Where this gets quite interesting is with cards that like untap your lands on other people's turns. So you can start making a lot of mana, and then you can just power it into big colorless spells. So maybe that's where our Ugin comes in. But like also if we have the card draw engine when we play face down spells, we can then just park all this mana and have one really big powerful turn where we're just playing a Morph face down with a bunch of our parked mana. We draw a card. We do it again until we find the way of winning the game. Like this is very early draft, but I think there is something there, and I do think a big mana deck is a nice way of taking this type of cube as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the big mana deck can also just be a deck that's interested in the more expensive to unmorph creatures, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, depending on what power level we go with, like get some Sargu Maulers or whatever in there.
James, I was thinking more, we hardcast a Croson Colossus.
yeah. Give me a woolly Loxodon anyway.
I mean, that's a slam dunk. We knew that was going to be a slam dunk.
It's not clear to me that woolly Loxodon and Ugin can be in the same cube, but we'll try. We'll make it work.
We sure will try, James. Nice. And then, I think one other combo that we should probably mention is a pretty classic Morph combo with Brine Elemental and Vesuvian Shapeshifter. Like, effectively what this means is if you get these two working correctly, the Brine Elemental, when it's turned face up, your opponent skips their untap step, and the Vesuvian Shapeshifter basically puts it down. So with these two lock pieces in play, your opponent never untaps. Very classic. Like this has been in the same draft format twice, I think. In Time Spiral, or no, in Time Spiral, and then in Time Spiral Remastered, you could do this. That seems quite a classic thing that will probably include, because it's a cool, iconic thing that Morphs can do.
Yeah. I think it would be. I think the people would lose their minds if you build it as a Morph cube and you couldn't pickle lock someone, you know?
Yeah. No, 100%. And that's the thing. Like, what we've gone over isn't the final pass. Like, but this is sort of a call to action to you all out there. Like, if you want us, or if you want me or James to carry on building this, let us know. It's something we can definitely look at. But if you want to take the list and continue building it, go ahead. There's a bunch of cool cards in there. Like, I do have a list of 172 cards that I think could work in this type of environment. That's the thing. We haven't discussed how big the cube would be. We haven't discussed like is it going to be balanced around all the colors? Like, traditionally Morphs tend to be in more teamer colors. Like, that's not where we are in the conversation yet. We are in is there enough different things that are cool? Is there enough decks that are interesting to actually take it further? And I think that there's definitely something there. James, would you go along with that?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting idea. I think there's a lot of different directions you could take. There's a lot of different sort of power levels you could shoot for here as well. Yeah, I mean, if you do take it, if you do take it forwards anyway, do put the list in the comments as well, because I'd certainly be curious to see what people come up with.
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, I think that's where we're going to end it today. James, pleasure, man. Yeah, I thought that was a really good chat. And like, yeah, this type of like, this is the part that this kind of like early design part of the cube is really gets my Timmy juices going.
Yeah. It's a good bit for sure. Yeah, no, always a pleasure.
Nice. And yeah. And everyone listening, thank you very much for listening. Do make sure you like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. I hope people found this conversation helpful because, yeah, there has just been such a big uptick in people trying to find the next hotness in terms of cube, and kind of like the steps we've gone through, I think are a good base for anyone doing that. So I hope you all found it helpful. Until next time, it's goodbye from me, it's goodbye from James, and we'll see you all soon. You'll take care. Goodbye.